I'm here with Iwo Bender. He works for EWTN, and you spend a lot of time and energy helping new studios to be built, right? In
Well,
Poland and
yes, thank you, Father. I'm very glad to be here. I work with a number of great people all over Europe, mostly East Central Europe, but also Northern Europe, some of the countries in Western Europe as well.
so there's a studio in the Ukraine.
Well, there is a whole TV channel in Ukraine, which is still, as we are recording this, it's still working remotely. People are, have evacuated and are scattered around the country, and but they are working.
Right. And so let's talk about that. Today is March 16th, so just wanted to say that. I asked you, maybe you could tell us a little about what's going on in Poland. We have Russia's invaded the Ukraine and just a huge humanitarian crisis. All these refugees out of the Ukraine into Poland. Roughly how many people is it?
Well, almost 2 million have crossed the border in the past, 2 weeks and 2.5 weeks. So Poland is a country of 38 million.
Mm-hmm.
So of course some of them are moving on to other countries, but a lot of them, they have nowhere else to go. So in fact, over the last 2 weeks, Warsaw's population grew by 20%.
Right.
And it's a gigantic effort to help people who, especially because most of them are women and children, because the men stayed behind to fight.
Right.
So it's enormous, and it's an enormous mobilization of people, of organizations, of associations, of parishes, of local and central governments. We have just to give you a picture. There is for instance, the Polish firemen, which is a sort of the sort of federal firemen. They have now all their buses are literally shuttling back and forth between the border and different cities, taking people
right.
to shelters, and sometimes to their families, sometimes to parishes, monasteries, local government offices, wherever you can find temporary housing. So yeah.
And how far roughly is Warsaw from the border with the Ukraine?
Well, it's a very long border, but it's roughly 150 miles.
Okay. And I had read reports, like monasteries were taking people in, but families, right? Just families are taking.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is they about a week ago they did a survey. And at that time, I think 62% of Poles did something to help the Ukrainians. Probably that number grew. And so, yeah, it can be families that have, a spare room, or, have a bigger house. In case, for instance, of EWTN Poland, EWTN Poland is based in a monastery of sisters, shepherdesses of Divine Mercy, and
that's near Krakow. Right?
No, that's near Wrocław, actually, in the west.
Oh, okay.
And the sisters there take care of elderly ladies, so they have a home for elderly ladies. And but they just took on, I think, 7 mothers with children, and so I think there are about 20 or so new people staying with them, and who knows, for how long,
Right. Yeah, that's what I talked to a Polish man from Chicago. He immigrated to Chicago years ago, but he's got brothers there, and he said that was his comment to me. A lot of families taking them, but how long can that last? And I was wondering, like in Warsaw, most people live like an apartment complex, so it's not much space.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Actually, there is a certain paradoxical blessing, because over the last 10 years or so, about 1.4 million Ukrainians already moved to Poland. mostly for economic reasons, because of the difference in wages, and life in Ukraine was very tough. And so a lot of the refugees already have someone in Poland, a cousin, a friend, so they have usually some place to stay. Of course, they're economic migrants. Obviously, they don't have mansions,
Right.
but there is at least that sort of first place where you can see a familiar face, because also all these children, because probably half of the refugees are children, and so actually now schools are opening special classes for Ukrainian children to quickly learn Polish so they can go to Polish schools.
And the language is totally different?
No, actually it's fairly similar. I don't know, maybe like I don't know, Spanish and French, or Spanish and Italian. So there is some level of communication that you can have even without knowing the other language. But these are different languages. So.
Have you live in Warsaw? Have you met or befriended some of the Ukrainians? Or?
I can tell you that for instance. About a week ago, I got out of the blue a phone call from a Ukrainian lady that I knew, and she literally wanted someone to cry to. And I said, "What is going on? Why is this happening? Are you here?" I said, "Well, yes, I'm in the outskirts of Warsaw, in a small town. I'm fine. I'm here with my daughter, but my sister stayed. She didn't want to come, so It's and also, I mean, let's not forget that we have EWTN people in there, and so I'm actually in almost daily touch with Father Alexander, who's the head of EWTN Ukraine. So.
Now, some of the people got out from the studio, and others.
One lady who has children, she's in Poland now. And everyone else decided to stay. I mean, basically, we sort of knew that things could go wrong, and so last year we actually started telling them, look, if the situation is out of hand, you can come to Poland. You can use EWTN Poland studios. We'll find a place for you to stay. So far, they're saying they're staying.
Oh, wow. And it's OMI priests?
Yeah, it's OMI and also lay people.
Okay. And lay people work for EWTN, or is it kind of their own entity?
No, they work there they work for EWTN Ukraine. So they're not, it's I don't want to get into the structures and things, but they operate the channel. They've been doing that for 10 years now.
Wow. And they televise their own mass.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know these numbers, but like the Ukrainian right, Orthodox, and the Catholic, what do you know roughly?
Well, it's kind of complicated because Ukraine, a large chunk of Ukraine, the biggest part of Ukraine, of what we know, of Ukraine in today's borders, was part of the Soviet Union, and Soviet Union from the beginning, from 1919, 1920, and that meant extermination of the church, of any religion, but especially of the Catholic religion. But I mean, they were ruthless. The Bolsheviks the Soviets were absolutely ruthless. And also there was a genocide known as the Holodomor, or the Great Famine, in which millions upon millions of Ukrainians were starved to death by Stalin, literally. I mean, grain was taken away from people living in the countryside so they would starve. Right? So
is this like the breadbasket, right?
It is the most fertile area of Europe, and yes, so they have an artificial famine in the early 1930s. So generation after generation, there was this forced, atheism. So a lot of the faithful were, hiding and could not really, participate in any religious activity. So, but okay, so plus historically, it's a very complex place. So there is the Russian Orthodox Church in Ukraine. There is the Eastern Orthodox Church, which was recently recognized by the Patriarch of all the Orthodox churches as the autocephalous as the independent Ukrainian Orthodox Church. And then you have the Catholic Church, which is also, so I would say roughly, probably, I don't want to, if we have any Ukrainian listeners, forgive me if I butcher the numbers, but I think it's about 30%, maybe more, of the Russian Orthodox, then probably about 20% of the Ukrainian Orthodox, and then you have Ukrainian Catholic, which is an Eastern Rite, which is 7% probably, and you have Roman Catholic, which is again 3% of the population. But let us not forget that the church was extremely cruelly persecuted. I mean, they
all the churches,
all the churches,
right.
all the churches, all the churches, and in different ways, so the so-called uniate or the Ukrainian Catholic Church was actually forbidden. It was forbidden in the Roman Catholic Church during the communist era. There was literally one priest in Kiev, a city of a couple of million people.
Wow.
So yeah. So it's a very complicated religiously thing because also a lot of Ukrainians who are Russian Orthodox are now basically saying what's going on, and if we have reports that a lot of Ukrainian churches basically refuse, that Ukrainian Russian Orthodox parishes refuse to recognize the fact that they are a part of the Russian Orthodox Church. So it's extremely complicated, and but on the other hand, of course, after the collapse of the Soviet Union and the independence of Ukraine, you have a tremendous rebirth of Christianity. And also you have lots of Protestant missionaries coming in, especially from the States, who basically, because people are obviously searching for meaning and they have woken up in a new reality 30 years ago when the Soviet Union collapsed after religion was persecuted. So there was a great rebirth of Christianity in different shades, but.
Right. And is there a large Jewish population?
Well, there used to be. So, like in most countries of Central Europe, in fact the term shtetl really sort of refers to a town, a Jewish town somewhere in Ukraine, and the Hasidic movement comes from the territory of today's Ukraine mostly, etc., etc. But of course, the vast majority of them were murdered during the Second World War. So there is of course some, the remnant
Right.
is there.
Right. And economically, Poland's doing better than pre-war Ukraine.
Well, yes, for a number of reasons. Ukraine was a part of the Soviet Union from 1920 till the fall, so 1991. Poland was a satellite country, a country controlled by Russia, but nominally independent. So it was easier for Poland to reclaim its place in Europe and to be integrated with the rest of the world. Also because there was much less direct involvement of the Soviet power or post-Soviet power there. And also the fact that a lot of Ukrainians actually spoke Russian as their first language I mean, Khrushchev was from Ukraine, for instance, right? Stalin from Georgia, Khrushchev from Ukraine. And it made it easier for Russia to still try to keep as much influence as they could there, and to foster corruption, to block reforms, to petrify old Soviet structures, social structures, economic structures, to try to tie them or bring them back into their orbit. I mean, well, Poland was fortunate to basically to be able to join NATO, for instance, over 20 years ago, and to completely to be open for trade, for investment, to open the borders, to travel around the world without visas, etc., etc. And Ukraine, because of historical reasons, was deprived of that. So it's sort of. It followed to some extent the Russian model of great theft called privatization, in which people who are connected, who had usually connections to the Communist Party, basically took a lot of the factories, of the big chunks of the economy, and that is not very productive. But they have been making great strides towards sort of normalcy, their elections were becoming more and more democratic. There was less and less Russian influence. They had two major uprisings back in the last one 8 years ago, in which they chased out a pro-Russian president. They were yearning for normalcy, as we sort of learned to understand it in the sort of the West. So definitely they were making great improvements of the past over the past 10 years or so. So and that was a big no for their former Soviet or post. I mean, sorry, I said Soviet because I think that Russia today is really turning to, I think you could call it a neo-Soviet Russia.
And so the countries, Poland and Ukraine, are similar as population.
In population, yes. In size, no. Ukraine is actually, if you don't count Russia, which sort of spans, Eastern Europe and some of bits of Asia, it is the largest territorially country in Europe.
Oh wow, the largest.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Bigger than France, bigger than Germany, bigger than the UK.
Okay.
It's very. It's one of the reasons why it's what the Russians call the special military operation, because if you say war, you can go to jail in Russia for 15 years. So it's a special military operation. Yeah. That's one of the reasons why it's so difficult for them to easily subjugate it, because it's vast.
Yeah.
So, but in terms of population, yes, it's between with population movements and everything, between 40 million people. So about 1/10 of the U.S.
Hey, with the Polish people taking in all these refugees, what about the Polish people and culture shines brightly in all this?
Well, I don't know. For the vast majority of people in Poland, this is just a obvious thing. Our neighbors, and we've had a very long history with Ukraine. When you are neighbors with someone for 1,000 years, there's a lot of stuff that happened, right? A lot of stuff that happened before.
Yeah.
But it was just well, first it was a opening, just a heartfelt thing. These people are obviously wronged by an empire that, until recently was occupying Poland. So of course we have to help.
Right.
It's and so what are the roots of that, etc., etc. Well, I don't know. I know what the reality is. It's a thing that was just obvious,
Right.
to most people.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm sure there are people who are not happy with that, but the vast majority are saying, we got to do what we got to do to help our neighbors, right?
Yeah.
And also, a lot of people are basically saying, look, sorry, they are fighting for us too, right? Because, Putin basically stated a long time ago that, the collapse of the Soviet Union was the greatest geopolitical tragedy of the 20th century. And the 20th century is pretty much chock full of tragedies, if you ask me, in terms of millions of people who were killed. So that then he became much more aggressive in 2008 and started a war with Georgia. He was carving out those little chunks of territory here and there, and Crimea 8 years ago, and the world said pretty much nothing when he took it, right? So this is not just about Ukraine. This is about the world living in peace, of course, relative peace, because we did not have a single year since the Second World War that would see peace all over the world. But such large-scale war in Europe, the last time it happened was World War II. Of course, if we there was the '56 invasion of Hungary and '68 invasion of Czechoslovakia. By whom? By the Soviet Union.
Right.
But despite the fact that, of course, especially the '56 uprising in Hungary was very bloody. It's nothing in comparison. I'm sorry what's happening right now in Ukraine is much larger scale, and much more terrifying. So literally, Ukrainians are fighting for peace in Europe and peace in the world, because who knows what this gentleman in the Kremlin is capable of doing.
Right. As you point out, he was head of the KGB for many years.
Well,
right?
he was actually a colonel of the KGB in East Germany.
Okay. He was never actually head of it, or
he was promoted by Yeltsin to be the prime minister of Russia. Prior to that, he was, I believe, the deputy mayor of former Leningrad, St. Petersburg, and or not even deputy mayor. I think he was the advisor to the mayor, and he was picked by Yeltsin. Of course, we don't really know how the transfer of power works in Russia. Right? I mean, it's not like people actually go and vote, and you have different you have parties, but they're a facade,
right? And
it's all controlled by the security apparatus that the former KGB, which has changed its name to FSB, and so he was from that cadre of old comrades who were trained in the from the time of the Cheka. Right after the revolution, they had different names, but the spirit was the same.
Yeah. And you grew up to your was it 9 or 10 under Soviet rule in Poland, or how old were you?
Well, I mean, I was I went to I went through. Through my high school really, and first year of college.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So I was, shall we say, very aware of what was going on.
Yeah. I remember we were in Poland for World Youth Day at Krakow.
Oh yeah.
And we one night, it was a group of us, we had some vodka, and I made a very big mistake of saying the Soviets invented vodka. And I got a big lecture about
Well, let's put it this way: it's not the most important bone of contention between Poland and Russia, okay? But let's put it, yeah. So the jury is still out. Okay, let's be tolerant and open here. Okay, so
an olive branch.
I might not be completely impartial if we are to touch this subject, but yes, it was invented in Poland. Yeah.
Okay.
And by the way, yes, it was invented in Poland, and I'm sorry, but please don't buy Russian vodka right now.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
No, I'm serious.
Right.
I'm serious. It's not just about symbols. It's about
Yeah.
it's about the fact that what they're doing in Ukraine. It is the part of the boycott that they, not the Russian people, but the Russian government deserves, and we have to do whatever we can to help the people who are being literally murdered every day, right? So I'm actually not joking. So.
Right. And are you hopeful that maybe the economic hit on the oligarchs that will pressure Putin? Do you think that's significant pressure on him? Or?
Well, he actually today he had this speech in which he was referring to some of those oligarchs who dared criticize him as I believe scum and as traitors and as I think he said mites that enter your mouth by accident and you just spit them out. The power structure there, we don't really know much about how it works. Of course, the sanctions are, working to some degree. We don't know exactly to what degree. I know that they're still getting hundreds of millions of dollars daily for their gas and oil that they're selling because, Russia, a country of such tremendous potential, has an economy that relies on the exports of raw materials, not manufactured goods, not services. They had plenty of time after the fall of the Soviet Union to rebuild their economy and to diversify. But no, they rely on that. Why? Well, I guess because the government decided to do that. For why? Well, we can guess because it's easier to exploit the profits and buy yachts rather than reinvest that.
Right.
So I think they are hurting. We have some voices, independent voices from Russia that are still saying that they are being to some extent successful, but I don't think that people on the ground in Ukraine notice that because they are still being shelled, and
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for talking with us about these things. I know it's not easy, and we're certainly keeping all this in our daily rosary here. The
thank you,
televised
Father,
rosary.
and especially pray for our EWTN friends in Ukraine.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.